This video is sponsored by iQOO, who have us checking out their new Neo6 smartphone, which, unlike the $1,000 plus devices that we typically cover on the channel, this one comes in at less than half the price while still having some of the specs that you typically only see on the flagships. We'll talk about those in a sec, but first, let's check out what's inside the box, where you have the phone itself, an included case which can help you save even more money, and yes, there's a charger included. Now, at this point, just having a charger in the box is a plus, but this one is actually an 80 watts fast charger, with iQOO saying it's capable of charging the phone up to 50% in just 12 minutes. That's an insane rate. But here is the phone itself. We got it in this dark Nova color variant. It's kind of like a green and blue depending on how you angle it and how the light is hitting it. We have the Neo branding under the triple camera system. There's a volume rocker and power button on the right side. And then of course you have the USB-C port and the SIM tray at the bottom. Overall, I like the way the phone looks. The way the color shifts on the back is pretty cool. But one thing worth mentioning here is this material isn't glass, so you're not gonna get wireless charging on this phone. But one of the plus sides of using plastic here is if you accidentally drop the phone, unlike glass, it won't shatter. So I guess pros and cons. All right, let's talk about those specs. There's a 6.6-inch AMOLED screen with a 120 Hz refresh rate. Now, you don't see that every day, not even on some $800 phones. It's powered by the Snapdragon 870 5G, comes with either 8 or 12 gigabytes RAM, depending on the storage configuration. It's using UFS 3.1 storage, and it has a 4700 milliamp hour battery. So not bad at all in terms of the spec sheet for this price point. In fact, the only thing that doesn't immediately scream flagship on the spec sheet is the processor, but I think iQOO made the right call here going with the 870 since it helps drive down the price, and the 870 is still a really fast chip. It's 10% faster than the Snapdragon 865, and that chip was more than capable on the flagships. So when it comes to performance, especially in combination with the fast storage and the RAM, which by the way can also be expanded by an additional 4 gigabytes since the storage on this thing is so fast, everything is snappy on this phone. In just a few hours that I've had to test it, where I've been installing apps, I've been fast charging it, and I've been gaming on it, it hasn't hiccuped on me once yet. Now, part of that obviously has to do with the specs, but the other part, maybe the big part, is all the work that iQOO did with their Cascade cooling system, which covers a huge area on the inside of the phone with multiple layers of graphite helping it run smoothly even when you're pushing it, like in those extended gaming sessions. And speaking of gaming, I actually prefer gaming on this phone compared to something more expensive like the iPhone 13. Because not only do you have that 120 Hz refresh rate with a 360 Hz touch sampling rate, so the inputs are super responsive, but the phone also has this 4D game vibration feature that actually adds vibration for things like shooting in games like Call of Duty, where normally you don't get any vibration at all. I started playing Call of Duty on here without realizing that that feature was on, and despite the fact that I've played Call of Duty for years now, I swore that all phones had vibration because it just felt so natural when I was playing. But when I switched back to the iPhone, I quickly realized that no, that's something that this phone is uniquely adding, and it's cool. It just adds to the experience and it makes it that much more immersive, as does the display on this phone. Now, this is a Full HD Plus AMOLED panel with a peak brightness of 1300 nits. So pulling up some HDR content on YouTube, it looks really, really good. And I wasn't expecting the speakers on this to be as loud and as full as they are. So when it comes to watching videos, whether it's on YouTube or on Netflix, it's pretty much a flagship level experience. All right, moving on to the cameras. We have a triple camera system on the back with a 64 megapixel main camera with optical image stabilization. OIS is something that normally you only see on flagship phones, so it's pretty cool that they included it here. You have an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera, and then this little 2 megapixel macro camera. So the main camera here is pretty good. Now, I've only spent a couple of hours with it. This is not a review, but the camera is actually better than I was expecting, with it being sharp, the colors being pretty accurate, and the scene detection working well. Switching over to the ultra wide, at only 8 megapixels, it doesn't compete with that main camera, obviously, especially in low light, but in well-lit conditions, you are able to get some pretty good looking shots out of it. And then for this 2 megapixel macro camera, well, I guess it's nice that they included it if you really need it, but at just 2 megapixels, to me it's mostly about the wide and the ultra wide on this phone, along with the selfie camera, which is a 16 megapixel sensor, and at least from the shots that I've taken here in the studio, the photos look pretty good. And iQOO has added a bunch of little filters and effects that help make it a little bit more fun. So, overall, I'd say at this price point, the camera is decent. I'm not saying it's the best camera in the world, but compared to something like the iPhone SE, which is the phone that obviously competes with this, with the wide and the ultra wide, I would take the Neo6's camera system all day, any day. And that's kind of how I feel about the phone overall. I think iQOO made the right compromises to bring the cost down, cutting things like wireless charging, which isn't really that big of a deal, but then they made sure to use the right specs, the better specs for the stuff that matters day in and day out, like that big AMOLED screen, the 120Hz refresh rates, the fast storage, and the RAM that you get with this thing, which I think makes it a pretty interesting option to consider if you're looking to get more bang for your buck. If you want to learn more about the phone, I'll be dropping a link down below in the description. But anyways, that is it for me in this quick video. Big thanks to iQOO again for sponsoring it and giving us an early look at the phone. And as always, I'll see you in the very next episode.